What's up everyone? Thanks for joining me. I'm coming to you from Morgantown, West Virginia this week. What I want to talk about today is displaying long variable values, right? It comes up a lot when I'm building dynamic SQL in particular, and I'm building these super long query strings and storing them inside of a SQL Server variable, and getting the SQL Server to display those strings for debugging purposes can be challenging sometimes. Usually just selecting the variable gives me most of the query text, if not all of it, but I lose the formatting, right? It comes back as one single line. It doesn't really make it easy to parse out what that query is doing without having to do a bunch of fine replaces on, spaces to generate new lines and stuff. It's a mess, basically. I don't like doing it that way. The other option I have is to use the print function, but the problem with that is that it is limited to 4,000 characters, right? So if I have a long query string, it will often get chopped off at the end before I can see the full text of that variable, not making it really useful for debugging. It does keep the formatting though, so I do like it for that reason, but if I can't see the whole string, it doesn't really help. So today I want to share a few solutions that I use to be able to see into those long variables to see their full query texts. And I know different tools exist for formatting your syntax if I did pull that variable string out using a select statement, but since I don't always have those tools available to me, I want to talk about other solutions that work inside SSMS. And so the first option is one that Eric Darling actually mentioned in his T-SQL Tuesday number 104 blog post. He linked to this script, which is a stored procedure that actually builds the query string out of a long variable and prints out the statements. It works pretty well. The only downside to it is that I need to be able to create a stored procedure wherever I am, so it's not always an option depending on if I have permissions to do that on a server or not. So the next two options are really universal, at least for database versions where SQL Server has XML in it. So the first method is to just cast my long variable as XML. What that'll do is not only does it give me a clickable result that I can just click on to open a new window, the query stays formatted, it actually works really well. The downside with the solution though is that certain characters like less than and greater than, which are not allowed in XML, will cause this method to fail, right? We just get an error message saying illegal characters found. So even though that option works for me most of the time, because I don't find myself writing queries with lots of less thans and greater thans, typically I'm using like equals for comparisons. So while that works for me 99% of the time, the other 1% of the time, the trick I use is to use for XML. Now, for XML might be one of the most abused SQL Server functions of all time. I rarely use it to create XML documents, but I do use it all the time for other things, like displaying the text of these long variables. For XML works because it encodes those illegal XML characters, right? It escapes them, so it's able to display them, and then all you have to do is do a find and replace to convert those back to less than and greater than signs, which is a slight pain, but it's not a huge deal. Like I said, I don't run into those kinds of queries a lot, and because it preserves the formatting nicely and everything else, I think it's worth it. So there you have it, several solutions for printing out the contents of very long variables while maintaining the format. If you know of any other ways of doing that, please let me know in the comments below. But otherwise, I hope you find this tip useful, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.